So, I counted earlier, and it's been 19 hours since I last ate. Um, I didn't intend to try and see the effects of fasting, but it's been a while. I haven't eaten breakfast. I haven't eaten lunch. It's now 3 p.m. Um, and I thought, fuck it, let's see what happens. And I'll document it because I need to prove that I exist. Self documentation is something I've been mildly obsessed with almost my whole life. I used to doodle on my worksheets a lot in school, in elementary and high school. And then at the end of the year, I would go through all my worksheets and pick out the ones with significant enough drawings on them and save them in a pile. And I still have them at my parents' house somewhere, probably still in a stack. My life is falling apart, and I need something to care about. I'm hoping my goal in all this is some kind of self-therapy, perhaps. Something to make me feel better, something to a purpose, something to do. And I hope to continue doing this regularly. Now, in the past, I've tried to do certain things regularly. I've tried to draw a picture every day, stuff like that, but I don't stick with it. But this time I'm really going to try. Now, therein lies the problem. You see, future actions, everything in the future doesn't exist. If it's going to happen, if it's a promise, it hasn't by its very nature. And so there's no reason to believe that what is supposed to happen will happen. Without immediate action, without action, things don't exist. And at least in my experience, you can only trust yourself with immediate action. I don't know what I will be like in the future. I don't know my state. I don't know what's going on. So promises of future action are inherently empty. Only by doing things now, in the moment, can you secure their existence. And here I am, doing something. We'll see how it goes along. I've decided to start a blog. I would like to interact with people more. Social interaction is a very important human activity, as I've learned. We are social creatures. Our civilization, our survival has long since depended on groups of humans. You can talk about agriculture, you can talk about specialization of labor, you can talk about division of labor, specialization into becoming a professional at one thing instead of doing everything yourself. It's practically hardwired into our evolution. So it would make sense that desiring contact itself would be a need for people. And it also makes sense from an evolutionary standpoint that desiring contact would be a dominant trait. It's one of the reasons that humans are a dominant species, is because we look to group together and become a society, a civilization, and then all the benefits that come with that. Now you can bring up the arguments that there exist animals that aren't that way and they are successful, but whatever. Rhetoric is not a science. Rhetoric and the use of facts to support a point are not scientific and rigorous in their nature. It just has to sound convincing. And that's one of the interesting things about rhetoric, is that it's basically all made up. whatever you can say that sounds convincing is ultimately the winning thing. You don't have to be correct, you just have to sound correct. You just have to convince others to your cause, your point. It's why the winning rhetoric, we'll call it, is not usually the best rhetoric. I had an English class that I failed out of due to attendance policy. I laugh because it's a bad scene, and I'm trying to make light of it so that I don't have to think about it. Anyway, and we had to analyze rhetoric and see how strong it was. Now, this is using classical theory of rhetoric. It's using the ethos, pathos, logos that everybody learns in high school. It's typical kind of stuff. And we're supposed to go out and find good and bad examples of this. But classically good rhetoric is not necessarily successful rhetoric, and vice versa. Successful rhetoric is not necessarily good rhetoric in the classical sense. Case number one, Donald Trump. I would say that he is okay. Now, this is mostly just opinionation because I haven't done the rigorous research to back it up. And a thing about me is that I like to make these kind of disclaimers, even though rhetorically speaking, I don't need to. I can just say things and they'll be believed because we are humans and we don't all check the citations. I believe that Donald Trump does not have good rhetoric, but I think that he has effective rhetoric in that sense. My hands felt heavier. My hands felt like they were losing blood, which would make sense. If my blood sugar is low, I'd like to do more reading on that. I was feeling woozy, lightheaded, and now I'm feeling a little better. Perhaps because I'm talking about it. Any action is positive action when you do nothing. I spend most of my days sitting in front of my computer, and I don't speak much. In chorus, it's harder to get into it, I think, because I don't speak much. Rather, what I believe is that if you speak more and you speak often, it is easier to speak. It is easier to, like, sing, to improvise, something like that, if you're doing it constantly. It's kind of like a mental inertia, where if you remain at rest, if you have been at rest, you will continue to be at rest. It's Newton's second law, I believe, which, if you want to get all technical and stuff, I learned in my physics class, because I'm a smart boy, that the second law is that there are frames of reference wherein inertia is a real thing that we can observe. There are inertial frames of reference. However, as everyone knows, it is an object in motion remains in motion, object at rest will remain at rest. I believe, and this is kind of a pseudoscience and personal philosophy, but I believe that the same thing is true for your mind. If you are... Oh, that was bad. I had a bunch of phlegm just now. Oh, boy. I should drink some water. If you're using your mind, if you're doing things, then you will continue to do things. You will continue to exercise your intellect, perhaps, we'll call it. Where if you are constantly indulging yourself, if you're doing things that you like just because you like them, like drugs, for example, then you will continue to do drugs because that's what you're doing. You will continue to do things that give you immediate pleasure because it is hard. It takes work to break out of them. And so, I don't remember the point in all this. I'm horribly depressed. I sit in my room a lot, and I don't talk to people too much. And we'll call this little self-therapy. We'll call this me trying to change, trying to do different things. All right.